Hi there, Courtney Schall here. Welcome back to the Yay for Business podcast. This is episode 37, and I'm going to talk to you about the concept of nuanced thinking, specific thinking. I'm really into this topic. This is a little bit philosophical, a little bit psychological, a little bit less strategic, but probably some of the most important work that you will do in your business and on your brain as an entrepreneur. So stay with me. The reason I wanted to talk about this is I actually got inspired. I did a whole voice recording brain dump on this topic while I was driving home from taking my husband to work, because I do a couple times a week. I drive him to the office and I do some of my best thinking in the car and like really getting out of the house and driving him there. It's about 20, 30 minutes there and 20, 30 minutes back. It really helps me to get into my creative thinking. And so I actually really enjoy doing it, especially in this COVID world where I don't get to get out and do a lot of things. And I am someone, as a human design generator, I respond to the world. So the way that I generate energy and ideas and creativity is by engaging with the world. So when the world is shut down, I am struggling. So I have to find these really little ways of, just inspiring my brain and activating my brain and stimulating my brain. And a lot of that kind of, it's really ADHD related as well, as like needing that stimulation to turn on my brain. And this concept came up on actually an ADHD podcast that I was listening to. I honestly right now can't remember what the title of the episode was or what the podcast was, but I literally stopped it after 5 minutes because I was like, oh my God, I've got to get my thoughts out on this. And what this has turned into is I realized that I always say this is the most common thing that comes up, but this really, I have done coaching for a lot of different business owners across a lot of different platforms in different programs and different capacities. And one of the greatest realizations I made and observations I made and lessons I learned for myself as well as my clients is that whenever we get stressed, or stress is probably the best term because stress just is a good general term for some system is under pressure. All right. We tend to go into very black or white thinking. Our brains love a binary system. They love a dichotomy. They love a this or that. It can't be both. It's one or the other and it's absolute. And this is what you have to start noticing about your own thinking, because without nuanced thinking, which is the opposite of binary thinking and black or white thinking, we make really bad decisions. We make extreme decisions. We ruin relationships, businesses, careers, all kinds of things because we see one little problem and we make big sweeping brushstroke changes when just a tiny little tweak is needed. So I've talked about this concept in a lot of different ways over the years. And some ways that this has come up is talking about pendulum swinging. So some of us, including myself, will often really swing from one extreme to the other. This is really common in yo-yo dieting, right? Diets themselves are extreme. Diets don't work. That's been proven with a lot of research. Yet people tend to go from one extreme to the other. They put themselves on some kind of extreme eating regimen and then it's not sustainable. And so then they pendulum swing to the other side and they want to eat a whole cake or something, right? And then they blame themselves. Oh my God, what's wrong with me? Nothing. You're a human being. You have a human brain. And that human brain is trying to, do these two different extremes, this pendulum swinging. And also that human brain can't sustain that, right? It's very frustrating. Think about the pandemic, the lockdowns we've had. You can argue very easily with science, very easily that when we quarantine and we self-isolate and we social distance and all of that it reduces transmission of COVID-19. That's very easy to show. But what I don't think is being discussed is that just because it's helping with that one thing doesn't mean it's sustainable to live like that. And a lot of people, including myself, have found that there is a huge mental health consequence to being in prolonged isolation and prolonged lockdowns. And I don't want to open a can of worms here, but I think this nuance of this conversation was not discussed throughout this pandemic. It was very much the facts are the facts. You need to do this. COVID-19, we need to avoid that. But for example, it has been shown that patients with dementia were already isolation is really bad for folks with dementia, and that they have now been the collateral damage of a lot of these lockdowns because isolation is horrible for a human brain that is already, in the throes of dementia. So if anyone is listening to this going, oh, Courtney, now she's on the other side, that's an example of black or white thinking. Is, have you ever in the middle of this pandemic had a moment where you thought, I can't say what I really think about this topic because that puts me on the other side. That makes me an anti this. That makes me we are in such a black or white thinking world right now. And it is absolutely tied to the fact that we are in survival mode and under stress, which makes us do more black or white thinking, which makes it worse, right? It spirals so out of control. And I'm not trying to get into a political public health conversation, but I just wanted to give some examples of how this is very much showing up in the real world and also on an individual level in our businesses. I pendulum swing, or I used to in the past pendulum swing a lot around before I discovered that I have ADHD and I need to just embrace who I am and had some self-awareness about some of these things, was being really, really rigid about my schedule for 2 weeks and being like, this is great. I love it. And then inevitably I'd fall off the horse and I wouldn't be able to maintain it and I would crash and burn in a spectacular fashion. And I really felt like I couldn't trust myself. I felt I had coaches indirectly tell me that I was acting out of integrity to not follow through with my schedule. So I had a lot of shame around this. And it was very much a yo-yo scheduling, a yo-yo dieting kind of situation with the schedule, right? So this is exactly the kind of thing that a lot of us have tendencies towards. Our brains have tendency towards these extremes, this black or white thinking, this or that thinking. And yet it's causing us a lot of problems. Another way this shows up, and a metaphor I use a lot, it's a terrible one, but it gets the point across, is throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So this is the main kind of angle on this that I want to talk about because I see this happen a lot. I guess all the pendulum swinging, the black or white thinking, the throwing the baby out with the bathwater are all versions of bad decision-making I see amongst myself, my clients, and other entrepreneurs that really, I'm so happy to be working with our clients in E400K because we get to address those things and prevent our clients from continuing with those decisions and helping them see where that's coming from and helping them learn for the future so that they will not make decisions in these very extreme ways in the future. But another way this comes up is that something will happen in your business, and I'm going to give lots of examples in a second, but something will happen. And because this one thing happened, all of a sudden you make this big sweeping change in your business because this one thing that happened really triggered a sensitivity or an insecurity you already had. And what your brain does is it locks into it already has a belief, right? Your brain already has a belief that something is true. And then it sees one piece of evidence that that's true and goes, see, told you so. That's why this will never work. That's why I have to do a whole different business model. That's why I can't charge these rates, whatever it is. And so our brains will really hold on to proof that what it already thought was true and see that's how the world works. And while that is absolutely your sort of lizard brain keeping you safe, it is also absolutely keeping you stuck. And again, I am right there with you. I've been through all of these these experiences. What we want to do instead is we want to focus on small tweaks, nuanced thinking, getting to the root cause. Okay? We don't want big sweeping changes. We're not burning everything down and starting over. Whenever I hear someone say I have to burn everything down and start over, huge red flag, pause, deep breath. That's never, ever, ever been the case. Yet I've also been there. So I understand how that feels. We have this tendency to want a blank slate. We want a fresh start, okay? And this is also a psychological phenomenon, is fresh starts are awesome. So sometimes we want them because we don't want to have to deal with the problems that we have. So we just want to swipe it clean and start over. And that when I see somebody going, oh, I just want to burn it down and start over, what they're really saying is, I don't want to deal with these problems. And if I just wipe it all away, it would be much easier to just build everything from scratch than to have to fix this whole mess of problems that I have. But what they don't realize is it's not a whole mess of problems. It is almost always, and I'm going to say always, because I actually don't think I've ever seen an instance where it wasn't the case in business, is a small tweak or two. It's a small tweak or two. That's it. A small, small, small tweak will make the biggest difference. Okay. Your brain, so let's talk about some examples of when your brain tells you, okay, there's a problem, alert, and maybe this is a client project that you're not enjoying, you're feeling stuck in it could be something as specific as a client made a comment, or something as general as I'm feeling unmotivated in my life, right? Like it could be anything, right? But there's an alert in the brain, something's not right, I don't like this, I need to get out. And so we decided it'd be easier to make a big sweeping change instead of looking at the nuance. So what this could look like is one client or audience member made a comment. Maybe they sent you an email or commented on a YouTube video or said something on a coaching call or gave you a piece of feedback that made you question everything that you're doing. And for those of us who have ADHD and rejection sensitivity dysphoria, this is our MO. Is somebody made a fairly neutral comment, but I took it as you didn't like this thing and my identity is tied into this thing. And I can't parse that apart. And now I'm questioning my entire existence as a human being because you made this very neutral comment, right? Or it could be someone left you a YouTube comment on a YouTube video saying that, they don't like your video because of X, Y, or Z is missing. And it really stings because you constantly are wondering if your videos are good enough, right? You have a little bit of imposter syndrome. Everybody's got it. So you have a little bit of imposter syndrome. And so that comment really triggers that feeling, right? It triggers that insecurity that we already have. You get triggered because it's something you're already worried about. And the second you find the slightest real world evidence that somebody thinks that's true, your brain jumps on it and sees, see, you can't do this. Go be safe, hide, right? It doesn't matter if you got 100 wonderful comments. They're all liars. This person has seen who you really are. And my video sucks and now I don't want to share it with anyone. Okay. So here's some that I've seen even just recently is I was talking to a client who, and I've seen this one a lot. So this isn't even just this client. This has happened a lot with clients I work with who are in different cultures. So this client happens to be in Europe. And what she said is the culture is different, in Europe versus North America, and which is not false, right? That's true. Culture is different. People, the way they buy things is different and, thinking is different. Yeah, sure. That's true. Also, there's similarities, but see how the brain makes these generalizations is it's different, which means everything is different. Okay. But here's where this was going. Because European psychology is different, that means people won't pay higher prices to work with me. That is a ridiculous generalization. It is so generalizing with no data. Now, if I asked, okay, what's the data you have to support that? Someone might say, they could throw out a statistic. Well, on average, somebody in this European country spends X amount on this type of service, whereas someone in America spends X amount or Y amount on that type of service. Okay, cool. That still doesn't mean people won't pay for it, right? So they'll find this one piece of evidence that their brain is see, that shows that people won't pay for it because they're already afraid people won't pay for it. So their brain is just scanning the environment to find evidence that that is true, right? What if we challenged our brain to do the opposite? What if we challenged our brain to look for evidence that it's not true? But that's not what your brain does. What you do is you feed your brain beliefs, and then your brain scans the world to find evidence to support those beliefs. And when you see things that don't support those beliefs, we tend to ignore them. Or if we notice them, we experience cognitive dissonance, which is so uncomfortable because we cannot reconcile what we know to be true with what we've seen, that we attack it or we fall into despair or we experience extreme discomfort. Okay. So we don't want that. We don't want to experience that. So we want to stay comfortable. Our brains want to stay comfortable. And so we're looking for evidence that what we believe to be true is true. All right. And so what I wanted to do, and this is one of the strategies I learned in my coaching training, is provide counterexamples. Well, I know people who work with clients in Europe, and I have clients in Europe, and they pay thousands of dollars or things. So that is factually not true. But people so believe, and a belief for your brain is a fact. It might as well be a fact. All right. So one of the things I'm going to talk about in a second is the importance of us really questioning the generalizations and truisms that our brains are telling us, because that is the world you are going to see, and evidence of that is what you are going to find. So here's another example, another pricing one, because this happens a lot with pricing. Someone asks you a question about your pricing. Maybe they say, do you ever offer discounts, or do you have a payment plan, or something like that? And because they asked a question about your pricing and you're already sensitive about your pricing and that it's too high, you decide, oh, my pricing's too high. This person asked a question, and that means my pricing is too high. I see this all the time. Someone has an objection. So this happens with our clients when they're launching their programs, is they do a webinar using our webinar strategy. And then at that webinar, you'll have people attending the webinar who maybe have some questions or objections about your program. And so they'll say, how much time is this going to take? Because I have a lot going on. So not you, but what happens is often the person launching, the entrepreneur, their brain will start to go to like, oh my God, people aren't willing to pay for this. Something. It's like, no, like they just want to know, like, number one, you're taking their question at like absolute surface level. There's a question behind that question. And it might be around like, they're so focused on how much time it's going to take. We need to redirect them to be focused on the value that it is and why it's important and worth that time. I get that question all the time. How much time is it going to take to implement Yay for 100K? And I go, well, that's a hard question for me to answer because it's literally everything you need to do in your business. So like, it doesn't even make sense as a question, to be honest. Like, okay, going through the materials, attending a coaching call, give yourself 3 hours a week. Okay. Beyond that, you're going to be doing a lot of work in your business that is going to come from this program. But also, what I know to be true is that a lot of our clients are not managing their time well and are spending way too much time on client work or work that is not leading to results. So what they're trying to see is like, how am I going to add Yay for 100K on top of what I'm already doing? And what I need to show them is that's not the right question. Okay. But if I let myself get all disoriented because somebody is like, I don't have time for that, versus me being like, you don't have time not to do it. And here's why. And again, like that doesn't mean everyone agrees with my answer, but that I fully believe in what I'm saying. And I know it to be true. That's a belief I have. It's a fact I know to be true, that they don't have time not to be implementing it. Where's their time going right now? That's my question, right? But if I let myself get so disoriented by that, then, oh my God, my program takes too much time. I need to make it shorter. That's where people go, right? Or people aren't willing to pay for this. They're not willing to make the time. No, it's part of your job in talking to them and coaching them through this, that you show them why it's more important than what they might be already spending their time on. Okay. Maybe you're feeling unmotivated, bored, just generally, just a sense of like apathy about your business. And so you decide, oh, I need to launch a new program, or oh, I need a new business. No, that is not nuanced thinking. That is black or white thinking. The solution is never that big. So if you find your brain coming up with solutions like that, it's not like, oh, man, I need to stop doing that. That's not the answer. The answer is, I'm having a very big overgeneralizing idea here that I need to start a new business. I need to dig into the root of what the actual problem is. Okay. Let's say you have a client give you some pushback on a boundary, and you're like, oh, people are going to hate me if I have this boundary. I'm not allowed to have this boundary. So one boundary we have a lot of our clients set, not all of them, but a lot of our clients decide to set, especially web designers and copywriters, is either only one draft of their website or no drafts. So they don't, like, the client doesn't get to like give feedback and then have it redone. It's like, you pay me, I do it, and it's done. Okay. And that might sound crazy to you right now, but I promise you it's very, very, very possible. And not only is it very possible, it often works better than having a bunch of back and forth drafting steps. Okay. But people have this belief that clients want drafts. And I just know that's not true. What clients want is they want the website that they want. Okay. So it doesn't mean thus they want drafts. See, clients want drafts is not nuanced thinking. Asking, what do the clients really want? And what do I really want? Well, the clients don't want to do a bunch of back and forth on drafts either. You don't like doing it. They don't like doing it. Let's eliminate it. I did this with my signature service, sales page CPR. No drafts. It was right on my sales page. There are no drafts. There are no refunds, right? And I expected a lot out of my clients, and they loved me for it. And our clients find that when when they do the same thing, that their clients love them for it. But let's say someone gives you a little pushback. Let's say you're already really unsure about this draft thing. And you have one client who comes and tests you on it, right? Like those, those clients, right? Those PETA clients. It's like, I'm going to push this boundary to see if you're serious about it. And they'll go, oh, like, I see you don't do drafts. Like, can I pay for an extra draft? Okay. Like just there's an example, right? They could push back in a million ways, but that's just one way. And so you might go, oh shit, I really should offer this to them. Well, says who? Who says you should offer it to them? You don't do drafts. So what, instead of going, oh my God, I have to change everything now because people don't like this. And now I just don't even want to be a copywriter anymore because I just hate doing drafts and I have to do drafts because everyone wants drafts. No. Deep breath. Slow down. Okay. Let's look at the nuance here. The client just wants to make sure they're going to get good copy. That's what they want. And they believe it's about drafts. But what you're doing is reacting to a belief they have, which isn't even a fact. So then you're bouncing off that with a belief you have that's not a fact, right? And then we're just spinning out of control based on nonsense. So as the service provider, your job is to be the strong, sturdy one who can go, hey, I know it can be nerve-wracking not to have drafts. Like, what is your concern? I don't do drafts, but the process I use is set up in a way to ensure that you're going to get the copy that you want. And if you want to make minor changes, you're going to be able to do that. So let's talk about, what are the specific concerns that you have that you think having another draft is going to fix? Right? So asking them to get specific, which I'll talk about in a second, is often when we get into these big sweeping, like black or white thinking, or we react to a client question or a problem in our business or a feeling, that it often comes down to specificity. It's an abstract fear we have. And when we get specific about, okay, what's the actual thing, right? What is it specifically that you're thinking a draft is going to give you? That then enlightens where the real thing can happen, okay? The real solution can happen, all right? A final example of this is, let's say you launch your program, this is very common, and you get fewer sales than you wanted, and you decide, oh, my messaging isn't connecting. I got fewer sales. I just know my messaging's not connecting. So here's what I know, because I have seen the data and the drama behind the scenes of so many course launches at this point, so many over the years. And what we do with our clients is, after they launch their program, we have a post-launch call with them, a one-on-one call to go over their numbers and also their thoughts about what happened. And what's so interesting is what I often believe is a mismatch between the data and the thoughts. Fascinating. I found that the way people think about their launch often has nothing to do with the data of their launch. So here's what I mean. We had a client who launched the first time, did something around 10,000, and launched the second time and did something around 12,000. Okay, let's say. But she really increased her price in between those two launches. All right, and had fewer sales in the second launch. And all she could focus on was, I have fewer sales. I didn't have as many sales as I expected, and was feeling down about it. And I said, but you made more money. You made more money and you have fewer clients to serve, which means it's going to be a lot easier for you to deliver this program, right? And so we often get really stuck on, oh, I had fewer sales. I didn't get as many sales as I want. That means X. Well, no, it doesn't. Also, let's talk about this messaging thing. Oh, I didn't have as many sales as I want, so I must need to tweak my messaging. According to what data? What is the data that shows you need to tweak your messaging? Well, I don't know. Someone asked this question about the program and I just felt like it wasn't clear. Okay, so one person asked a question. Basically, what you need is a way to overcome that objection, not a totally remessaged program, which is usually the case. And what we find is that people will have these amazing launches, but they've decided in their brain, oh, I didn't do all the Facebook Lives that I was supposed to. Oh, I didn't send all the sales emails. It's like, great. So next time you'll do those and you'll do even better. But this time you did great. Your data is awesome. Okay. But the psychology that someone's in after the launch often does not match the data. And what I found is that without being in our program, People often don't even have the data. They have their feelings, and their feelings are what they're making their decisions on, not the data. They might have like, oh, I know how many sales I got and how much money I made, but they don't have all the KPIs they need to have to make any kind of assessments about what tweaks they need to make in their next launch. Okay. So I already mentioned that it's a huge red flag to me whenever I have a client say that they feel like burning it all down and starting over. That's literally never the case. So we need to look at, okay, what specifically is causing you to say that or feel that way? Again, get into the specifics. Don't jump into reacting to their emotions, and don't react to your own emotions, right? That can be hard. Get an outside perspective. That's why working with a coach is really helpful. But we also find like we'll have clients submit questions for coaching calls. I love when this happens. It happens all the time. And I do it too, right? Like with my own stuff, right? But it's so helpful for us because we can see it happening better than someone can see it happening to themselves. Is that they'll have a question that is, okay, so I've decided to create this new workshop about X, Y, or Z because I feel like that's what people really need. And okay, so like I have this new strategy and this is what I'm thinking. Is that going to work? And I'll get the sort of sense just by knowing them over the months and years and seeing their work that like there's more to this than that. So I'll say, okay, so what's causing you to do this workshop? And they'll say, well, my course launch didn't go so well, so I'm assuming this will be a great way to warm up leads for next time. I'll say, okay, what made you think that your course launch didn't go so well? Oh, well, I didn't get as many sales as I wanted, right? Oh, so what made you decide how many sales you wanted? Well, I had it in my head I was going to do 10K and I only did 7. Okay, but what does your data say about your launch? What their data often says is you need more traffic. You needed more eyeballs. But what they've decided is my audience isn't warmed up enough, so I'm going to go create this whole workshop. Does this workshop strategy work? So they're asking about this strategy that is like 5 steps removed from a decision they made about what the core problem was, which isn't even the core problem. So we're just constantly walking people back, okay? The other thing that comes up is a situation where it'll be like, okay, I've decided to do this, like, I'm going to price something this way, and it'll be this sort of like complicated, like I'm going to give them this price and then do this and that. And it's like the root cause of them doing that, and it'll be this whole system of pulleys and levers, I call it, is like, I'm going to create this whole complicated system. And I'm like, well, why? And then it's always like, will it work? I'm like, well, I don't know, but like, why are you even creating it? Well, because I had someone ask me a question about the price and I just don't think they're going to buy it at that price. Okay, well, let's solve that problem. You created this whole system of pulleys and levers to avoid a problem that's not even a problem. But the thing is, you had a limiting belief triggered because you don't believe in your pricing, and someone asked a question about it and you went, see, no one's going to buy it, which we don't have evidence of. And usually we have evidence that they will buy it, but your brain has decided they won't, right? And so they've said, oh, they asked a question, that means they're not going to buy it. So not like concoct this whole like complicated solution to get them to buy it when that's the solution isn't to like scotch tape together a house of cards to cover, the thing. It's like, let's just address the thing. Like, we don't need to do all this. It's not necessary. So here's what I said on a Facebook or a Instagram live with my friend Chelsea this week. I said, if the foundation of your solution is a limiting belief, it's not a solution. What kind of results are you going to get from that? You're literally creating a strategy to solve a problem that is based on a limiting belief. It's an utter waste of time. It's utter waste of time and resources. So what we do as coaches is get in on that limiting belief. We want to get in at the root cause. Okay. So let's talk about how to do that. I'm going to wrap this up by talking about how do we actually get into more nuanced thinking. Well, number one, like I just said, question yourself and backtrack until you get to the root of the problem. Stop coming up with solutions and instead question the assumption of what the problem is. Okay. Over and over again, I see people coming up with great solutions for problems that don't exist. All right. Great solutions for overcoming the fact that people won't pay for the thing that they're creating when people are willing to pay for the thing that they're creating. And they're creating this whole crazy strategy to like entice people, which is just confusing people. Okay. So this happens a lot. We'll say, hey, why don't, to a client, like, hey, why don't you do this? Like, here's what we recommend you do. Here's a strategy. We outline it. And you can kind of tell they're a little hesitant. And we're like, what are your hesitations? And they'll kind of tell us, but then a week later is when we really hear it is like, okay, I didn't implement the strategy. Well, why not? Well, because, and they'll always say it as a fact, well, because my people aren't willing to pay for that. How do you know that, right? Then we're able to solve that problem. So my people aren't willing to pay that. How do you know that? Okay, ask questions. How do you know that? What's the evidence that you have? Okay, how do we know that to be true? Who told you that? Is this hitting on a limiting belief or a fear that you have and it's triggering that? Okay, that one can be hard to do without coaching, but if you practice, you can get a little bit better at it. Stop thinking in terms of good versus bad and start thinking in terms of gray area and neutrality. Okay. So X number of sales is bad, but 5 sales is bad, 10 sales is good, or like anything except 10 sales is bad. Catch where your brain is doing that, setting expectations based on no data, right? And then is like, if that doesn't happen, it's bad. Play out the worst case scenario. Play it into the specifics. Get into the specifics. So we had a client who was really worried. She was really stressed about needing to book a client in the next month. And she was kind of resistant to coaching because she was freaking out. So she wasn't really quite in the place where she could be receptive to coaching, which I totally understand. So instead of coaching her on how to get a client, which is what she thought she needed, I was like, we need to let your mind calm down about the fear, because the problem is we're not even able to help you get a client because you're so, your amygdala has been hijacked by like this fear of like not getting the client. So let's play out. What if you don't get a client? What's going to happen? And what she ended up saying is like, well, I would probably have to get a job. Or like my husband will have to get a job. It was something like that. And I was like, okay, are you going to die? No, but I mean, like, that's not what I want to do. I said, well, no, but can you handle it? Will it be okay? Yeah, I can do it. I could handle that. It would be okay. It's not ideal and it wouldn't be forever, but that's the worst. We're talking worst case scenario here. What could actually happen? What in all likeliness would actually happen? What are you actually afraid of happening? Because what usually is happening is we have this big nebulous anxiety fear that isn't nailed down. And we actually go, okay, like what is the fear? The fear is I'm going to have to get a job. Okay, well, if you had to get a job, you'd get a job. And we'd move on with life. And you'd do that, you'd make some money, you'd quit, we will make it work. It will happen. Okay. So getting to the specifics, getting to playing out the worst case scenario, questioning your assumptions. Like I've said, what evidence do you have for this? So people won't pay for it. What evidence do you have? Well, nobody's bought it. Okay, well, does that thus mean that nobody will pay for it? Like, just because nobody has paid for it? I mean, that's just like, that's a conundrum, right? Like, how do you prove the negative of something? You can't, it's so hard, right? So I know people who do pay for things like that. So clearly it's not that people won't pay. Maybe it's that our marketing isn't there yet, our positioning. Maybe it's that you haven't even pitched anyone on this yet. Right? Like, how do you know nobody's going to pay for this? You can't possibly know that you can never know that for sure, by the way. You can't prove a negative. The next one is beware of big sweeping changes that you feel tempted to make. This is for all my ADHD friends out there as well. Small tweaks. All about small tweaks, getting to that root cause of the problem and fixing the root cause, not the top level weed whacking. Okay. A lot of you guys are weed whacking rose bushes. And it's like, it's not a weed. That bush was fine. It just needed to be pruned a little bit. Like, slow down. That's not what was necessary. Okay. So make a tweak at the root cause. And a good example of this is I was feeling really uninspired and unmotivated by my business a few months ago. And I was also feeling really overwhelmed. And I was having that thing where I was waking up too many days in a row being like, I hate this. And I was like, oh my God, I need a new career. I need a whole new business. What's my next career move, right? That is big, sweeping, massive changes. Not what it was. What it ended up being was that I was spending way too much time in a management role and way too much time. We had too many people on our team and there was too much to manage and there was too many meetings and I wasn't able to do the work that I really enjoyed. And so that was the problem. Well, that kind of solved itself because we had some people leave the team, not like it was all like very like amicable and everything. And our team is much leaner now and is scrappier and things are really easy right now, like really, really easy. And we didn't make any big changes to the business. We just eliminated the complexity of the team. So the example of what that would look like if I was a binary thinker is I would think, oh, I need a new business. But the nuanced thinking is what specifically is causing me to feel that way? what is the real problem? And this is where some journaling can come in really handy. I love a good brain dump, good journaling with some question prompts. What is causing me to feel that I need a new business? Okay. So do some journaling on that. Oh, well, I realized too many calls, too many meetings, or maybe you're feeling stifled by one particular client. Maybe one person, maybe you just had one of those weeks where you had like 3 bad things happen in a row and it just feels like everything is falling apart. Maybe you just need some space. So we really want to get down to the specificity. What this nuance is really about is getting out of these generalizations and into specific thinking. What specifically do you mean by that? We had a client say, I don't enjoy coaching. Okay, well, coaching is a big thing. What is it specifically that you don't enjoy about coaching? Okay, we want to get as detailed as possible about this. Otherwise, we make changes to our business that are not in our best interest. Okay, I hope you really enjoyed this conversation about nuanced thinking. I hope this has kind of started your brain, your wheels turning a bit on ways that you can bring more nuanced thinking to your business. I would love to hear your thoughts about this concept. I love talking about some of these more like psychological things. This is totally my jam. And thanks for sticking with me through this. And I will be chatting with you in next week's episode. Yay! Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you love today's content and are ready to finally start making a full-time income from your business this year, make sure to get on the wait list for my program, Yay for Clients, over at yayforclients.com, and you'll be notified the next time enrollment is open. Or if you're already booked with clients and you want to learn how you can turn your signature service into a signature program and add 100K of revenue to your bottom line, come apply to my group coaching program, Yay for 100K, over at CourtneyShaw.com/apply. Thanks again and have an awesome day.